welcome back. We're at Footnotes in Valley History. I'm Richard Adams, your host and your resident non-historian, but has won major history awards. And then Nancy Sorrells is over that way.
Right here.
Yeah, right there. And Nancy's got a master's degree in history and stuff, and she knows about history. And the reason the show started was because I used to go bike ride with Nancy. Was it my Swin Orange Crate? No, it was a newer bike than that. And she would tell me all these little trivial stories about these places, not trivia. What's the word? Ramblings.
Yeah, I guess random trivia.
Trivia, yeah. And we'd be riding through Rafine. She'd tell me about Rafine. That's how we got the first show being Rafine. The first show was actually The Pandemic, which is the new name. The kindergarten name, I saw it on Facebook the other day, for the kindergarten kid was Pandemica. That's going to be a name in 5 years from now. So anyway, and so we did Augusta Springs. I used to work at Craigsville, not at the prison. I wasn't in the prison. I was actually at the elementary school. And then so today we're going to do that name that's just catches everybody's attention, which is, Nancy?
It's Buena Vista, and it just personifies crazy pronunciations for valley names like Rafine that we already talked about, McGackiesville, but Stanton, of course. Stanton is the classic that everyone from away from here thinks it's Staunton. But I was telling Richard the way I kind of connect Stanton and Buena Vista is, one time years ago, my husband and I were at the north rim of the Grand Canyon, and we had a postcard to send back to my father in Stanton, Virginia, and I addressed it, and I stood in line. You can hand stamp, get your postcard hand stamped, with north rim of the Grand Canyon. So I stand in line and I get up to the front, and the little man in the Park Service uniform looks at me, and he turns the postcard over and he stamps it, and he says, Stanton, Virginia. And I said, how do you know how to say Stanton? Because nobody knows how to say Stanton. And he says, well, because I'm from Buena Vista.
Of course he is.
So he knew how to say all the weird things in the valley. So Buena Vista is one that throws everybody, especially when I have my friends come in from California, where they have lots of words that have a Spanish, accent on it. And then they want to say, oh, let's go over to Buena Vista. And I'm like, well, nope, it's just Buena Vista or BV if you're from the valley.
Man. Anyway, and speaking of Buena Vista, it's on US 60. So US 60 starts over here in Norfolk. It cuts up through Williamsburg and all these places. It goes through Buena Vista, Amherst, Buena Vista, Lexington, all the way to LA, and it actually goes fairly close to the Grand Canyon. So that guy might have taken US 60 out there after you cross the Rio Grande River, which is about 13 feet wide, no water in it. You just go about another couple hundred miles there, and then turn right, and you're in the Grand Canyon. It's pretty cool.
Well, he might have taken that route out there.
Might have taken it, yeah, because that's the way to go, man. So Buena Vista, give me a little lowdown. Who's the expert on Buena Vista? I mean,
I'm not the expert on Buena Vista. I know a lot more about Augusta County history than Rockbridge County history, which is where Buena Vista is located. But I come to it a little bit naturally because Rockbridge was originally in Augusta County, and it was pulled out of Augusta County in 1778. Right at the eve of the American Revolution. But the experts, and the ones who I've learned a lot about Buena Vista from, probably the expert is an older man named Francis Lynn, and he has written everything there is to know about Buena Vista, and he's a native, and probably Buena Vista facts just course through his veins, I think. And the other person who's told me a lot about it is our mutual friend Debbie Garrett, who is from Buena Vista, still lives in Buena Vista. She's the legislative assistant for Congressman Ben Cline. And Debbie is a William and Mary history graduate. So whatever she didn't learn by growing up in Buena Vista, she learned by, graduating from that esteemed institution. And she's born and bred and breathes Buena Vista. And she actually served on the city council.
Wasn't she vice mayor?
She was vice mayor. That means she's in charge of all the vices, the smoking and the drinking and the cussing, and the partying. And so, and that's Debbie. You just ask her.
Not bad for a lady that has perfect attendance at the for multiple decades at the Buena Vista Presbyterian Church.
That's exactly right. And so Buena Vista, if you haven't been there, I recommend you stop by there. My dentist is there. I wouldn't recommend you go there to go to the dentist, but so I get to go there at least once every 6 months, and usually more often than that. But it's a pretty drive, and it's a pretty little town.
Yeah,
so, it's actually a city. It's a independent city within the state of Virginia.
Which means it has its own school system, its own board of what's called city council.
City council has its own courthouse. It has its own municipal services. So has its own golf course too.
And Lexington is a town, right? Lexington is not an independent city.
Yes, Lexington is. I don't know if Lexington's a town or a city.
I think it's a town. Anyway,
okay.
It used to have its own school system. That's what I was thinking. But now they merged. But
they merged with Rockbridge.
Yeah, but they did not do that. Well, somebody will tell us. Like Debbie
will tell us after she watches this.
Debbie will tell us. I'm sure she will.
Yeah.
Anyway, because she went to William and Mary. So go into Buena Vista. When did it start? When what happened? It's down there across the river, up next to the mountain. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's kind of squeezed between the Maury River, which is a tributary of the James, and the Blue Ridge Mountains. And so Buena Vista was actually settled just like the rest of the valley in this area, probably in the 1720s or 30s. But the family that really set it on its course was the McClure family, and they show up in the 1770s. And then that area, and they owned a bunch of land there, and they found some iron there. And they weren't the only ones in the valley that found iron. Anybody who was living along the ridges of the mountains discovered that there was a lot of iron here, and there were a lot of ironworks in the valley, all up and down sort of that area squeezed between Route 11 that runs north-south and the foothills of the mountains. So right there in that section, they started an iron furnace there, an iron foundry. And just like a lot of the other little places did. That's how, for instance, Vesuvius just up the road got its name, because of the hot volcanic action that happens when you're making iron. But the iron in this iron foundry wound up being used for munitions in war. And the war that earned its name was the Mexican War. And apparently a lot of iron went to make, things like cannonballs and other munitions for during the Battle of Buena Vista and the Mexican War in the 1840s. And so in honor of the patriotic service that this foundry put forth to help us win that battle in that war, the name Buena Vista, as we've twisted it a little bit here in the valley to put our own particular brand on it. That's how it supposedly got its name. Now that iron furnace went out of business in the 1850s.
Okay.
The town of Buena Vista doesn't actually come into existence for another, 3 decades or a little bit longer. So that's the next part of the story. That old iron furnace, you can actually see the ruins of it just to the northwest of the current town or city of Buena Vista. Where the road, which is 608, kind of makes a turn at the South River and bends around toward the east and comes in the backside of Buena Vista. Right at that crossroads where there's Mount Pleasant Elementary School, and then across the road is the ruins of what was South River Market, which had a very tragic explosion about a year ago, I guess, where several people died. But across the road from the site of that market, see these big limestone ruins, and that's where the foundry was.
And that's right next to the river.
Right next to the river, the South River. So the South River, not to be confused with the South River that goes through Greenville and
This is the South River that actually goes south.
this is the South River that goes south. It's not the South River that flows north into the South Fork of the Shenandoah. This is the South River that flows south.
Gotcha.
And hits the Maury River, which flows through Lexington. The Maury River used to be called the North River, but it didn't flow north either. It really flowed east. And it hit it in the South River goes into the Maury, and then the Maury absorbs the South River, gets bigger, and then goes through Buena Vista, and then flows into the James River.
Yeah, that South River hits it just above the bridge in Buena Vista. I think it's
right before you get to Buena Vista. If you follow the old Chessie Trail, the nature trail, which connects Lexington to Buena Vista, you can actually see where the South River comes into the Maury River. If anybody wants to get out and explore things, that's a nice 7-mile trail from Lexington to Buena Vista. It follows the old canal that connected the two of them, and then the old railroad that connected the two of them.
And we're not going to cover this today, but somebody's going to know the answer to this, and maybe you know this. But the Maury used to be called
the North River. It used to be called North River,
and it got named after Maury. Yeah.
Matthew Fontaine Maury, who was the Pathfinder of the Seas, who was a professor at VMI. But that's a whole nother Zoom meeting for us, I think.
Yeah, that's the North River that goes south.
That's the North River that goes east.
As opposed to the South River that goes north. But this one, so the South River that goes south runs into the North River that goes.
Well, we're gonna make you geographically dizzy.
Yeah.
Talking like this, so maybe we better. But know that those two rivers coming together, and that canal that connected Lexington and Buena Vista on into the James River, and the railroad that followed that same path later on, is all the reason why Buena Vista is there today. In the 1880s, a fellow named Benjamin Mumaw, who had a farm, he was a Brethren preacher. He had a farm, and he also had a little bit of a business streak in him. And he thought that this was a crossroads of transportation. There were two railroads coming through. There was this river, this canal that no longer exists, but you can see the remains of it. And the river especially could power industry. That this was a place where maybe you could do more than just farm. And so there was a kind of a fledgling community. He had a big farm there. It was called Green Forest Farm. And he decided that he was going to use the river and the transportation aspect to start a tannery to make leather. And he could ship it out on the railroad, or he could ship it out on the canal. And he got the idea that maybe this could become something bigger than just a little spot in the road. That Buena Vista, the city of Buena Vista, used to be called Green Forest for the name of the farm that this preacher, Mr. Mumaw, lived on, or Hart's Bottom. And there always been a little bit of industry there, like tanneries and pulp mills and things like that. But he got this idea that there's going to be more, and so he created a company. He wrote what he called the Buena Vista Prospectus. And also at the same time, they found some more iron ore and kind of started some more ironworks really closer into the town. He wrote this prospectus and got some business people together, and they decided to sell stock. And they sold they sold $400,000 worth of stock. And this is about 1888.
Man, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, and they sold it, and they sold it in 30 days. And
he must have been a good preacher.
He must have brought the fear of God to him. I don't know that. We should ask Debbie or Mr. Lynn that. But anyway, sold it in 30 days and raised the money. And they planned out a town. They drew up this town, sold lots, and then within a year or so, this was a big boom town. Now, this was the time all across Virginia where these things were happening. Basic City, which is now absorbed into Waynesboro, was happening at the same time. The railroads were coming in. The South was coming back from the devastation of the war. You had people going to work. You had industries starting up, and newfangled things happening. The railroad was connecting the whole country and getting products to market easily. And so they created this boomtown, and within a year or two, there were churches. There was a courthouse. There was a big hotel, the Buena Vista Hotel, that became
Southern Sim and Southern State University.
Yeah. And so within 2 years, they became incorporated as a town, and they actually I've got the date here somewhere. Let's see if I can find it. Important dates in Buena Vista history. March 7th, 1889, they had a vote to decide, is this going to be called Green Forest, or is it going to be called Buena Vista? And so important date in Buena Vista's history is that's when they decided that it wasn't going to be called Green Forest, it was going to be called Buena Vista.
And they said Buena Vista.
They probably did. I wouldn't imagine that they changed. And then on February 15th, 1892, through the state of Virginia, it was chartered as a city.
Okay.
So just about a little over 35 years ago, it had its 100th anniversary. And I remember when they were doing big 100th anniversary things for it. So, but even before 1892, by 1885, they were just hopping. The churches have been, the first public school was built. It was a log school, 1885. It's just a little one-room thing. Then in 1890, they built their first church. It was not First Presbyterian Church. It was Epworth Hall. But then that was January of 1890. By March, the Presbyterians had built their church, the one that our friend goes to today. And then another big thing, May 9th, 1890, they built a brick school, a big brick schoolhouse. And the principal was a guy named Perry McClure.
P-A-R-R-Y.
Yeah, P-A-R-R-Y, McClure. And a descendant of that original family who had formed that, found that original iron and started thinking about this being a center of industry. So he was a beloved principal there. And they also, on January 17th, 1890, they formed a baseball team. And that baseball team beat Lexington that day.
Oh, my goodness.
28-15.
Caused a riot. Yeah.
Caused a riot. And then 1890, the Buena Vista Iron Company opens up, and that operated until 1924. And so 1891, they built an opera house. 1891 also is when the Hotel Buena Vista opened, that became the college. 1892, Mr. White was elected as the first mayor. 1894 is when they started having, young ladies started having college classes in that hotel.
Okay.
And then very quickly after that, the hotel kind of transferred to the college. A fire company was formed in 1905. You see, this was a hopping town. And so, that kind of goes on and on like that. But so it was a big, a boom town. So it was the most hopping place. It was much more, I think, active and hopping than the county seat, which was Lexington.
Okay.
So,
yeah. The interesting thing about it, if you look at Buena Vista from a map, and I'll probably show in here, but it's on a grid. I mean, you can tell it's a pre-planned city.
Exactly. It was all laid out.
They're either named after trees or numbers, and the numbers go consecutively, I think, from south to north. And then the trees go from A to whatever, like, apple, banana, cherry, whatever kind of trees.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's really interesting to go through the town, and because whenever I go to Buena Vista and do some kind of a school show, I go like, so do you live on a tree street or a number? They go, how do you know that? They'll go, avocado. Anyway, it's a tree.
That's right. My husband's cousins live on Orange Street.
Yeah. So
which is orange, the tree, not the color.
Yeah.
So that's exactly right. It's totally planned out. So it's unlike most of our little villages and everything that kind of occurred, or maybe they planned out and drew up the main street, but then it kind of sprawled out from there. Buena Vista is a totally planned out city, and so it's reflected in. It has some buildings that are on very historic on the National Register of Historic Places. Now, it did incorporate there were some older things. If you go down to the park, Glenmorey Park, there is an old house there, the Elijah Paxton House, built in the 1830s. So obviously long before Buena Vista was, a thought in anybody's mind, but that was the Paxton family was there. And there's a historical society associated with that, and they've restored that house. and preserved not only the house story, but also within it the story of Buena Vista.
Yeah, I don't know if you know this or not, but Buena Vista's on both sides of the river now. Was it always that way, or was that incorporated? Because they could have incorporated up to where that golf course is or whatever.
That's the question we need to ask Debbie about. I know that originally it was about 12,000 acres, so I imagine it's expanded. But once you become an incorporated independent city, there are rules about what you can do as far as annexing. And right now, no city is allowed to expand any further in the state of Virginia. There's a moratorium on annexation. So,
but back then they might have been able to do it.
Back then they might have been able to expand. I don't know. It would be interesting. Maybe some of our fans can write in and tell us more about Buena Vista. That's how we learn and continue these series, is for more people to sometimes we get as enlightened from our feedback that we get as we have enlightened other people. That's the fun thing about history.
And this is only episode 3. Imagine.
That's right.
Imagine
that's
history that's ahead of us. The history that's ahead of us.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
That will become history in the future. So one other important thing to know that runs deep in the heart of people in Buena Vista is that that river, the Maury River, giveth and it taketh away. Buena Vista is there because of the power and the promise of the river, of the industries that can be run there. They've always had a lot of industry there, from those iron works to the tanneries to the pulp mills to the mills themselves and factories. But that river,
the school bus factory was
bus factory, and there's a whole, there's a Modine, the manufactures heating and air conditioning units. The school bus factory, the Bluebird factory, came there in 1972.
Okay.
And so but there's others. They've always had a good manufacturing industrial base, which is why they're there. But it's all tied to the river and the power of the river. Well, the rivers can get pretty angry, and what people don't realize is because of the mountains, and because they think about hurricanes and the terrible tragedy of hurricanes as being something that happens on the coast, like way down in the Gulf Coast in Texas or Louisiana. But those hurricanes, people sometimes forget that they play out and you think they've gone away, and then they move up sort of in a northeasterly fashion, and they get to the mountains here in the valley, and they just the mountains kind of grab them, and they stay here, and they just dump just incredible amounts of water. And so this area, far, far from the coast, is actually some of the most hurricane susceptible area in the country. And in 1969, there was an especially tragic Hurricane Camille, that came in and dumped in our area 30 inches of rain in just a period of hours. And terrible tragedy over in Nelson County, but in Augusta and Rockbridge, also it played out pretty horrifically, especially in Buena Vista. And then again in 1985, we had sort of the remnants of Hurricane Juan, plus some other storm systems that clashed, had a big another storm. So Buena Vista has always suffered from those storms, and so there's a park now, Glen Maury Park, along the river, and there's a huge flood wall that runs along that park that in part protects the city from the worst of those flooding events.
It's really when you cross the bridge downtown, if you turn at the old football field where the band practiced, the band used to practice down there, and they had no lights. This is in the 60s, 70s. The Sheba Lane, Lawhorn Lane told me this. And they would actually, the parents would come around and turn on their lights and light the field for the band. Isn't that cool? Yeah.
That's right. And the Paramaclore Blues, the marching band became the Marching Blues, I think, and Paramaclore is the Fighting Blues. And I think the marching band kind of got going in the 40s and have a long tradition, but not as, also another big tradition is at the high school, which is now called Paramaclore High School, after that first principal of the first
the second Paramaclore High School. The first one's the elementary school now, or whatever. It's the one with the wall around it.
Right. That's the original one.
That's the original high school.
Yeah. And that's the one that when we were in school, that's where we would go. And we were always a little scared to go there because it's the school behind the wall. But they, our football teams, I went to Riverheads High School, and Riverheads and Perry McClure, when they played, that was the game of the whole area for the whole season. I mean, you played your season to beat Perry McClure, which we didn't do a lot because they were a huge powerhouse. And you would get thousands of people who would show up, and they would park, if it was at Riverheads, they'd be parking all the way down Route 11 to close to where the gas stations are now.
Really?
Yeah. So, and then in 1977, Perry McClure went undefeated that year, and they won the state championship in football.
So. Anyway, it was a good year, man. Anyway, so now Buena Vista is the floodwatch. It's interesting if you go through Buena Vista and take a right at the football field. I was telling you, the old football field with no lights on it. That bridge, you can see actually where they wind up and close the wall, the flood wall. I never noticed that before, but it actually closes up a gate it's like a big moat.
Right. Yeah. And so that is there, and there's a nice park there, and that Paxton House that I was telling you about is also in that park. So that's a nice little jewel in Buena Vista. And then there's the college itself, which is just a wonderful piece of architecture that became the hotel quickly transformed into Southern Seminary and junior college. It was a women's junior college that kind of catered toward horseback riding and equestrian things. And then that transformed into Southern University. Do you teach there some?
Yeah. I'm the tuba instructor there. Yeah, low brass. Sometimes I teach brass, but yeah, that's affiliated with the
Mormon
Latter-day Saints. Yeah, and it's affiliated. It's the only Mormon Latter-day school college east of the Mississippi, and you have to go all the way around the world to Hawaii to get to the next one.
Really?
Yeah, but it's a good little school. And they've got, they're a Division III football team. And let's not leave out the Kenny Burger. Right. So I don't know if you can still get this or not, but I got this at Kroger's, which is really called Kroger. But if you live in the Shenandoah Valley, you have to say Kroger's, the Food Lion, the Walmart. So this is reminds me of our good friend Gary McQueen. Used to be the superintendent of schools. So Gary loved. He would stop at Buena Vista on the way to Smith Mountain Lake, cutting down 501 the old way. And anyway. Did I mention the 501 thing about Beach Boulevard?
Oh, no, you didn't.
Oh, I didn't. Yeah. So if you get on, so when I drive down to the school, if you ever go to Myrtle Beach, it used to be a sign when you're coming down 17, and it's a 501 to the right. And US 501 goes through South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia. It stops on US 60 in Buena Vista. Okay. So it's just another way to get to California or the Grand Canyon. So if you look, it used to be the sign that said Buena Vista that way. I mean, in Myrtle Beach, big green, huge, over the top of the road sign. But if you go down 60, if you get your Siri or your Alexa or whatever you got, and you're going down there heading from Lexington down 60, going east, and you take a right on 501, it says you're now on Beach Boulevard. Look to your left, and you'll see if you take the old, not the bypass around town now, but you can go get some Kenny sauce, the only hamburger with Kenny sauce in the world. And there used to be Kenny's in Verona, apparently. I'm sure we'll get more comments about Kenny's than anything we get on. Where were the Kenny burgers? There's the question.
Right. Yeah. Please let us know. And that canal, if you want to go out and take the hard way to get to Buena Vista, go to Lexington. Then get at park and get either on your bicycle or walk. And there's a 7-mile trail called the Chessie Trail that goes from Lexington to Buena Vista. And if you go along that trail, you'll see some remnants of the old railroad and also of the old canal. You can see some of the old canal locks along the road. And you can see where the South River goes into the Maury. It's a really pretty trail. And that's the old navigation route. When that canal was built that connected Buena Vista and Lexington into the James River and Kanawha Canal system that took all the produce down to Richmond, that would be their flour, their wheat, their leather, their whiskey, because there was a distiller who lived in what is now Buena Vista. His name was Jockey John Robinson, and he came from Ireland.
Of course he did.
Of course he did. Came from Ireland, where whiskey was invented, and he was a huge ran a huge distillery, and also endowed Washington, what is now Washington Lee University. When he died, he willed just about everything to, including a lot of his whiskey. But he actually created a riot in Lexington back in the 1820s or 30s when he helped endow one of the buildings on the Washington Lee campus. And when they cut the ribbon for the ceremony, he brought one of his barrels of whiskey and opened it up and let everybody drink it and created a riot because everybody was heading for the whiskey.
So happy, yeah.
So Jockey John Robinson, that connects Buena Vista really to Lexington.
It's a shame they didn't name the high school after him. Jockey John Robinson High School. I mean, that deserves a wall.
Yeah, but I think that would have been a little bit hard for the Presbyterians to take, even though I'm sure he was a Presbyterian, because the Presbyterians were the biggest distillers, and they're the ones that really brought the distilling into the valley. But again, another subject for another great conversation that we can have.
So I think in addition to the Kenny burgers, so don't forget the Kenny burgers. I don't know if you can still get it at Kroger's or not. Anyway, Kroger. So our next show is going to be about whiskey, because you're like one of the world's leading authorities on whiskey in the Shenandoah Valley, even though you don't really drink a lot or any that I know of.
Right.
Yeah. So is that a good one? Can we do that? That'll get this is called
that sounds like a really good one. And some people have been sending me some information about some distilleries in this area. I mean, that one will be a spirited discussion. Let's just say that.
Yes, let's just say that. Yeah. All right, Nancy. Well, you're not at your usual. I'm in my house here. So here's Grandma right there. There's my grandma. I'm a historian, and there's the acolyte stick from the Lutheran Church. Actually, there's a.
Oh yeah. So there you go. Well, this one I'm doing this one. The last couple have been from my home, but I'm down here at the Augusta County Historical Society, which is at the Smith Center in Stanton, and so this back here is our research library. Come visit us when we're open again. We're putting together a great exhibit on some artists from Waynesboro. That could be a topic for another talk. But I want to tell you one other thing, and I should have given you a little hint at the beginning. I was going to give you one bit of trivia, one little bit of trivia, personal trivia about my connection to Buena Vista.
Okay, here we go.
So if you go down Route 11, well, let's say you go down 81, and you get off of 81 at on Route 60, and you're off of 81 and you're heading east toward Buena Vista. And right at around the interstate exit, there's a little kind of a pull-off where people probably can park, kind of like almost a mini park and ride.
Right.
And that point right there is where I got engaged.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And the reason is because
to your first and last husband?
To my current husband, Randy.
Yeah.
And that engagement took place in October of 1980.
That's fancy.
Just a couple of years ago, but here's why it happened because I went to Bridgewater College. I was a senior that year. Randy had been in the Army, and he'd been stationed in Korea, and he got out of the Army, and we'd been dating first. We dated back when I was in high school, when we were both in high school. So he got out of the Army in October or late September, and I was going to Bridgewater College my senior year, and I was on the volleyball team, and we were playing, where were we playing? We were playing somewhere down in Roanoke, maybe Roanoke College, I believe. We were playing Roanoke College, and I had gone home. We played them on a Saturday morning. So I had gone home Friday night, and Randy was home too, but I needed to meet the team as it was heading south from Bridgewater. They needed to pick me up somewhere to get on that, so we could go down and we could play Roanoke Saturday, and then I could ride back with the team back to school, or I could ride home if some family came. So I went home Friday night, and then Randy said, "Well, I'll take you to meet the team. Let's meet at the Buena Vista exit." And so that's what was decided. And so he got there kind of early, and I thought we were kind of early to meet the team, and that because he took that extra time to pop the question. He popped the question, gave me a ring. The volleyball van pulled up. I jumped on the van. They said, "Hey, what's happening?" I said, "I just got engaged." showed him the ring, and we went on and played volleyball.
Did you win the game, or do you remember?
I have no idea.
That's what I figured. Remember, you got engaged. Don't remember the game. Okay.
Don't remember the game at all. And I think Randy might have followed in the car and then, watched the game, and then I went home with him. I can't even remember now, but I do know that, if someone wants to put a historical marker up there, that's the place to do it.
Okay. We're looking for donations and
yeah, we're actually looking for sponsorships. If anybody wants to sponsor this, likes this show and wants it to be seen regularly, we're looking for sponsorships. We're working on a logo. We're working on a jingle. So.
Yeah. Just hand us cash. It's fine. We'll deal with it. So, all right. Well, Nancy, next time we talk, we don't have a regular time yet. It's kind of Fridays. It depends on the weather and the internet and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, so thank you for doing this. And once again, today's show was about Buena Vista and the fighting blues of Buena Vista. And next time we'll be talking about whiskey in the valley.
Okay.
So stay tuned.